video is semi a rant, and semi also useful, I think, for people, so you can decide. So this video is going to be about how to be a good tourist. Essentially, the idea is that you know, people visit other cities and they don't treat it like the city that they come from, essentially. And I've just got basically some tips as someone who lives in a very touristy city as to how to best respect the city and the locals while also not necessarily infringing on the fact that you are on holiday, having a good time. A couple of things before we start. First thing, my window is open because it is very warm in here. Yes, I have a jumper on, but it's a Christmas jumper. You gotta wear the Christmas jumper. So if you hear background noise, that is why. Second thing is sort of my credentials, where I'm coming from with this. The first one is obviously that I have come from, I used to live near Newcastle, which is a semi-touristy city, and I now live in York, which is a very touristy city. I work in an industry that very much relies on tourism, especially one of the museums I work for is a very touristy museum. I won't tell you what it is if you don't know what it is, because I don't really want that information publicly on the internet, but it is incredibly touristy, so I deal with a lot of tourists on a daily basis. And my third credential is the fact that my degree focused quite a lot on heritage and conservation of tourist cities, and talking about like conserving the heritage versus people having a good time and supporting the economy and things like that. So I have, as well as it wasn't my complete degree and it definitely wasn't my focus, but in my undergraduate I spoke a lot about that, and my master's is very heavily about things like that. So I have academically done some things about this. So here are a few tips that if you are going to visit a touristy city, what you can sort of keep in mind to make sure that the city enjoys having you. I'm also going to put another disclaimer on this. I know there's a lot of disclaimers on this. Some of these things you wouldn't be able to do, or you might find more difficult to do if you are disabled in any way. That might mean a physical disability, it might mean some sort of neurodivergence, however you define that. Some of these involve maybe a self-awareness that you might not be able to have if you have a certain type of neurodivergence, or it might involve sort of asking you to stand somewhere that you might not necessarily be able to stand, and I want to stress that that does not apply to you if you cannot do these things. This is not what it is aimed at. Some of these things anyone can do, or at least I believe anyone could do. Let me know down in the comments if you disagree with me on that. But I just want to stress that that is not for you. This is not me having a go at you for not being able to do something, because that is just not how you're built. That doesn't count. Want to put that straight away, but these are things maybe if you can to take into account. So the first one, this is a pet peeve of mine, and I think anyone who knows me knows that this is coming, and that is stand to the side when you're taking photos or reading a map or answering the phone or anything like that. If you live in a touristy city, you will know exactly what I mean, and this is the most irritating thing that you can do as a tourist, and I think this is a thing that most people should be able to do, but I get it. York is a very beautiful city. Wherever you happen to be, you're probably visiting it because it's nice and you want to see things and you want to take photos, and that's fantastic, and we encourage you to do that. But oh my god, please do not stand stock still in the middle of the shambles to take a picture when you've got a whole school group behind you. Just 2 seconds of some sort of self-awareness. Step to the side, make sure there's nobody behind you. When you are walking around in a city as busy as York, or wherever you happen to be, I'm just using York as my main example because that's the one I know the best. You have to treat it like traffic. You have to treat it like you're driving, and you wouldn't pull out into a road, you wouldn't stop in the middle of the road without checking what was behind you first, or at least I hope you wouldn't. So do not do that on a busy street without checking who's behind you. Do not swerve into the middle of the road without looking at who's coming. Do not stop in the middle of the street without looking at who's behind you, because there are people all the time everywhere. This might not be what you're used to in other cities, but if you need to take your phone out to check a map, you need to find somewhere to the side to stand to. You need to make sure that nobody's going to bump into you if you immediately stop, that kind of thing. If you need to stop for other reasons that you can't really control, absolutely fine, but this is a thing that happens every single day in York. If you live in York, you will know what I'm talking about, and it is so annoying and actually dangerous in some situations. So I have a lot of feelings about this. I'm taking my camera into York today. Honestly, if I just turned my camera on when I was walking around York, I would record so many examples of me nearly walking into people because they just stop in the middle of the road. I have a lot of opinions on this, can you tell? The second one is kind of related to this. It's a similar point, so I'm going to kind of squish them into the same one. And that is just be aware that people work in this city. That you are there to enjoy the city. You are there to look around, and you are strolling around and taking in the sights. But please be aware that there are people who are there to get things done, and that not everyone is doing the same thing as you are. For example, the most common example of this in York at the moment is the Christmas markets, and they are lovely. Don't get me wrong, I like walking around the Christmas markets just as much as the next person is, but you have to remember that that is a main street that people are going through on an everyday basis. And while you think that everybody is just strolling around to look at the Christmas markets, I can guarantee that there are people on that street to get somewhere. And when you're in the mindset of like, oh, I'm here to enjoy this city, I think you kind of assume that everybody else around you is also a tourist who's here to enjoy the city, and they won't mind if you're strolling around and stopping and taking up sides of the street, because they're also as relaxed and enjoying it as you are. But that's not always the case. I've been late to lectures before because of people just oblivious to whoever's behind them, and things like that. I think these 2 points are kind of related, where it's just that be aware that there's other people in the city, be aware that it is not all tourists, this is still a working city. I mean, at least I hope you wouldn't just stop in the middle of the street in London, because London's known for like businessy people and people trying to get to places. Well, people are trying to get to places in every city, and just be aware of that. Make sure there's room for people to get past. Make sure that if you see someone walking quickly, you make way for them, because you don't know what they're going to do. People are just trying to get about with their lives. I could go on about this for a long time because this is a thing that really annoys me. But I will stop it there. Also, disclaimer, and there's a lot of disclaimers on this. This doesn't count if you're just walking slowly. Sometimes I get people who are walking slowly in front of me. I understand that it's annoying, but I don't know why they're having to walk slowly. I also walk quite slowly as well, so there might be many reasons why they're walking slowly. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is like stopping every 2 seconds and strolling around and stopping and having a conversation, and that's what I'm talking about. That if you know you're going to be doing that, just take a second to be like, right, we're going to step in, make sure there's a pathway, make sure people can get past. Not just for people living their busy lives, but also for things like pushchairs, wheelchairs, if there's an emergency, that kind of thing. Just be generally aware of your surroundings and make sure that you're taking into account other people. Okay, moving on to things that I do have strong feelings about, but it's less ranty feelings. Shop local. Now, it is very easy, I know, to come to a city like York or a city like London or wherever you're going and be like, right, we're going to the massive department stores. That's what you do. You go shopping, you go to the big department stores. But the local people will appreciate it so much more if you shop locally. Now, don't get me wrong, shopping in a big high street store is better than shopping online, and if you want to buy something from there, that's absolutely fine, but just take a second to check out those local shops. These are shops that you're probably not going to see anywhere else in the world, and the people who are working there rely on tourism. If you're in a city, that's what they're there for. They're there for you. Don't be worried about being like, oh, it's a shop for local people. Leave a comment if you get that reference. But it is more that they are there to support you, and that is what they're expecting you to come in and to want to chat and to not know the city. So shop local, it'll be better for you, it's better for them, better for everyone. While you're also in these local shops, local museums, whatever it is that you're doing, speak to the people who work there, because the people who work there are local people and they will be able to tell you about things. I always make a point whenever I'm in a museum and I'm chatting to someone to ask them something about, like, oh, you're looking for somewhere for dinner or something like that, so I can recommend them somewhere. And listen to the local people when they recommend you stuff as well. They live there, they know what they're doing. Ask them about it if you feel comfortable enough. I know sometimes with anxiety and things that might not be as easy, but as I said, those things, if you have other things going on, these don't necessarily apply to you. But if you can, ask, just say, we're looking for someone to go to dinner after this. Is there anywhere that you recommend? And they'll probably be able to tell you the best place to go for dinner, and it will be, better than the KFC that you were going to go to. It is definitely worth asking. These last three should apply to everywhere, but I think when people are away or in a new city, they forget that these still apply. And the first one is going to be a pretty obvious one, and that is don't litter. This is one of the ones that I say that pretty much everyone can do, unless it's, you know, an accident, but please don't treat the city that you're visiting like you would want your city to be treated. I'm assuming that the people who are littering are probably not the people who wouldn't litter in their own city either. I don't think very highly of litterers, you may have noticed. But just don't. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're here for a festival, so you think, oh, everyone's gonna do it, or whatever you're here for. Just don't do it. It's such an awful thing to do, and it makes the city look bad for the next people. And again, remember the people live here, that it's not just tourists, that, you know, we're the ones who have to deal with it. And like, I shouldn't have to say this, but like, please find a bin or keep a hold of it. It's not that hard. Be aware of residential areas. You're in the middle of a city, the chances are there's probably people living there, and doing things like being really, really loud, or like going home really, really late at night and like singing at the top of your voice or whatever. People still live there, so just be aware that that happens. You know, same with like, it's not just being loud, it's also things like if you're parking somewhere, be aware if it's a residential area that someone might need to be there, or if you're, you know, taking up a whole bunch of space on a pavement for whatever reason. If it's not a reason that, if it is a reason that you can control, be aware that like people live there and they need to use that pavement. Just again, this comes back to the main theme of this video, is that remember, people live there and they're trying to get on with their lives, and the city isn't just there for your enjoyment, it's there for people to live in as well. My last tip, the third one, which again I think should apply to everywhere but seems to be a thing that people forget when they go on holiday, is to read the signs. If you see somewhere that says do not sit here, do not sit there. If you see somewhere that says that you can't take photographs, don't take photographs. If it says keep off the grass, keep off the grass. This is definitely a thing that comes up in my degree quite a lot. There has actually been a big thing in Venice of churches being damaged because of people sitting on the church steps outside to eat their dinner, to eat their lunch or whatever you're eating. Don't do things like that. Stick to benches if you want to sit down, unless, you know, it's an emergency, you have to sit down. As I said, you know what the disclaimer is by now. If it says keep off the grass, keep off the grass, because there might be a really good reason for it. It might be that there's wildflowers growing there, it might be that they've seeded it, it might be that that grass is part of the conservation of the nice fancy building that you're in, that it has to have a nice lawn, so ruining it is actually ruining some of the conservation on the building. You know, there's a whole bunch of reasons why those signs are there. They're not just people shouting randomly at things. There probably is a good reason why it says that, and even if you can't think about what it is, there is still one there. You know, and it also comes down to basic respect as well. If you walk into a shop and it says not to take photos, don't take photos. You might think that it's just stupid, but maybe that shop had an experience where someone took a photo and then copied some of their art and sold it and made a profit. You know, there is reasons why people say these things, and it does just come down to basic respect. If you're ever not sure, have a look around, and if you ever think, this doesn't feel quite right, maybe it's not. Or maybe just ask someone. As I said, the local people know that it's a tourist town, and they know that most people they're going to speak to are tourists, so like, do not feel ashamed to be a tourist or anything like that. You are employing me at the end of the day. If it wasn't for tourists, I wouldn't have a job. The university probably wouldn't be as big as it was. You know, there's a whole bunch of things that happen in a city because tourists give them the money to be able to do so. So nobody is saying that they don't like tourists. That's not what this video is about. The video is about informing you on ways that you can help a city if you are visiting it, and ways that you can, you know, you can go there, you can celebrate it, but you can also be respectful and be a positive influence on the city instead of a negative one. There's a whole bunch of other things which I won't get into because I've done whole modules on it and you don't want to sit and listen to me talk about that, but basically the moral of the story is be respectful and be aware that people live there. I think those are the two main takeaways of this video. But there you go, there's my rant about tourists. No, that's not true. My rant about disrespectful tourists. It's been boiling up inside for quite some time, and I needed to get it out there on the internet. But if you guys have any questions and you want anything answered from the perspective of someone who lives in a very, very touristy city, who knows a little bit about this, I'm not going to say I'm an expert, but I will say I probably know more than the average person about this. So let me know down in the comments and I'll see if I can answer. And if anybody else lives in a touristy city and you have any other pet peeves or things that you'd like to tell potential tourists, put them down in the comments as well. Let's get a conversation going about this. And if you guys have any requests or questions, then leave it down in the comments. New videos every Wednesday-ish. Now that I'm at work, they're not on a Wednesday. Mostly new videos every Wednesday. If you have any requests or questions, leave them down in the comments. I've already said that. Like, subscribe and all that jazz, and I'll see you next week. Bye.